Well, as I said, I'm going to try to not take up too much of the time here because you're the ones who are facing these issues every single day here in Wisconsin. And so first, let's just go down the line and talk about yourselves and the companies and kind of just give us a little introduction. So, Mike?
I'm Mike Nikolai. I'm the CEO of Waupaca Foundry. We operate 7 facilities, 3 in Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Tennessee, and Pennsylvania. So we have a pretty good presence. I would say one of the things that's unique about us, the smallest community we operate in is 3,500 employees, which is Tennessee, and the largest is 12,000 employees in Effingham, Illinois. So we have a good, I would say, when you talk about the rural initiative, we have a very good presence throughout all states with the rural initiative.
Liz.
Okay, good morning. My name is Liz Filter. I'm the president and CEO of VARK Incorporated. And VARC provides subcontract packaging, assembly, and other services to private sector industry corporations on a local, state, and national level. And we have 5 locations, primarily in southwest and south central Wisconsin, providing these services, along with external offices in 4 other locations in the state as well. So the assembly packaging services that we provide subsequently and simultaneously provide employment opportunities for training and other life skills services for individuals with disabilities. So we serve approximately 750 people, both children and adults with disabilities in the state of Wisconsin, approximately 500 of those being in our employment services. So we're excited to be here and talk a little bit about the state of rural employment and how that's impacting some things in Wisconsin. So thanks for having me.
Thanks. Chad?
Well, I'm with Sargento Foods, which most of you know is the cheese company. There's lots of great cheese companies in Wisconsin. I personally kind of like our cheese company, think it's the best. We've got about 2,000 members of the Sargento family. We're privately held, was started over 65 years ago by Leonard Gentine, actually Louis, our current CEO's grandfather. And all of our employees are based here in rural communities in Wisconsin, Plymouth, Kiel, and Hilbert. We take very good care of the communities we're part of. We have a stakeholder concept, and that means that each of those communities means as much to us as the company itself. And so this is really exciting to be here today and talk about this because it's something that's sort of near and dear to our company's heart.
Well, something that we've talked a lot about with the Future Wisconsin project is the fact that so many people nowadays are moving more towards those urban areas, the Milwaukees, the Madisons, and maybe even the Green Bay or Eau Claire areas. A lot of the counties that are in more rural Wisconsin are losing population left and right. And so as an employer who isn't in a major metro market, you're not having Milwaukee or Madison to attract all of those people there. What are some of those challenges that you're seeing being in that non-metro market? And I'll start with Chad and we'll come back.
Sure. Well, you make a good point. It is a definite challenge, particularly for a company like ours. Obviously, we have a big branded business, right, which requires recruiting a lot of young professionals for our marketing teams, our advertising teams, and helping us put those together, not to mention all the other support functions that come with a billion-dollar consumer goods business. We're in Plymouth, and when people graduate from Madison or they graduate from the schools in Chicago, Plymouth is usually not on the top of their list as to where they want to move. What we really try to do is to figure out ways to manage it and to attract that talent by really helping them understand that our location gives us the ability to provide a different corporate culture than they might get from the big food companies in Chicago. We really do mean it when we talk about people as being part of the Sargento family. We try to treat people. I mean, Leonard Gentine started out by saying hire good people and treat them like family. And we really live that out today, and we make sure that people coming out of school understand that. So we do things by providing them benefits, work-life balance, all of these other kind of things that other companies are not able to provide them when they're starting out, to help them understand this is a good place to start your career and hopefully to stick with it for the long term. And if you really look at these rural communities, they actually provide a lot more amenities nowadays than people realize. I mean, like shopping, for example. It used to be you had to go to a shopping mall, right? But now you've got Amazon Prime, right? Anything can ship you anywhere at any time. And so some of those issues are starting to become more easy for us to surmount in terms of attracting talent to our office.
And Liz and Mike, obviously your company's a little different than Sargento. I mean, every grocery store in America that you go in, you're probably going to see the Sargento brand name. So when you're trying to attract people from Chicago or some other part, you say Sargento, they know what that is, whereas maybe your companies are doing work for third parties and they may not recognize the brand as well. How do you attract those people to your locations when they may not know a name brand like Sargento?
Some of the hiring is a little bit different for VARC in that we have a workforce that's always readily available, in that we're providing services to approximately 250 people at any given time that are working in our production facilities. So we're a little bit different in that we're providing that service provision, and the opportunity for that labor force is almost readily available at any given time. However, we also do have 200 to 300 other individuals working in various positions as they would be in any organization. So one of the challenges that we've found in some of the southern and western parts of the state is transportation, and some of the challenges that exist in attracting people to travel 30, 40 miles sometimes outside of a city and into a space that has 3,000 or 5,000 people, and there's not all of the amenities that sometimes exist in other locations. So we have the advantage of providing transportation ourselves. It's built into our service system already. We operate a fleet of approximately 25 buses for the service provision component of our business. So we've dovetailed that to include some of our employees that might be traveling for some of those locations and offered that as an opportunity for them to get to work. So it's a benefit to those employees that may have had to travel and commute. We've also tried to instill and build in a culture of a social enterprise, which is a major component of our business. It's innate in what we do, and we try to grasp folks who are interested in giving in their communities and contributing in other ways through their employment, and built that in as a benefit. So we offer things like $1,000 scholarships for our employees who would like to travel locally or internationally to do activities of giving or service related to populations of individuals with disabilities or other disadvantaged communities, so that we can give internally to our employees as well, and try to really foster that feeling of gratitude through their employment. And so we've had to become creative in developing some internal benefits that are outside of a typical benefit package, very similar to how I think my colleagues will respond as well. So drawing in and really capitalizing on the social enterprise component of our business helps draw really great people.
And Mike, what are the challenges you're seeing in Waupaca?
I would say what we've seen, especially in the last year and a half, it has been the workforce challenge. But what we've had to do, we've concentrated on how do you keep the talent that you have in the community in Waupaca. A good success for us would be we have 4 engineers now from the town of Manawa, which is probably 500 people, because we targeted those people in the high schools to be able to come to work for us, and then they've grown into great employees. And I would say overall, we've had to look at, I would say, a lot of non-traditional things. So as Liz talked about busing, we in the last 6 months actually had brought people from Ironwood. So they were closing in the Marinesco, Wisconsin, Ironwood area. They were actually closing the federal prison up there. I met a gentleman, that's my next door neighbor at our lake. He posted for 10 positions and had 200 applications in Marinesco for his water bottling plant. So we were able to go up to the Ironwood area, and we told the employees that if they allow us to bus them for 6 months, we would put a facility up in the Ironwood area in return for their hard work. and it's worked out good. I believe we hired 58 people, and right now we've only had 1 or 2 turnover in that 58, even though we were busing them for the 6 months into Waupaca from the Ironwood area. So all of these things, when you talk, on the big stage, immigration, we've brought 50 people from Puerto Rico into Wisconsin. I would say that was interesting, because the first day they showed up, it was about 10 below zero, and none of them had jackets, so we had to take them down to Fleet Farm to buy jackets. So I would say it was some very interesting things like that you've learned. We keep telling ourselves there's really no, I would say, dumb ideas on the rural initiative, and I think this is why these panels and this discussion is, I've picked up ideas every time I've been here about what you can do to attract new employees.
So this is something that we've talked about in the WMC offices a lot. With the Future Wisconsin project, we kind of came up with the thought that we needed to focus on rural Wisconsin this year because there are so many challenges that might be different than some of the urban parts of the state. And we went around the state, we talked to businesses, to folks who live there, and it came back workforce. I mean, it's seems to be the same issue that everyone is feeling throughout Wisconsin, but obviously there's some little tweaks here and there. And so I know Liz and Mike, you guys kind of touched a little bit on some things you're doing, but I kind of want to go a little bit more in depth about new practices that you've come up with to really attract talent to these smaller communities in Wisconsin. So Chad, what other things are you guys doing to really bring people in?
Yeah, and you're right, it is a challenge. I mean, if you look at the labor shed in these different areas, and if you're trying to maintain a plant that is going to make lots of cheese in a very small community, you need to have that labor force, and it's difficult to find it. One of the things we do is we try to play to what we consider our strengths and the strengths of the company, which, as I mentioned, was our culture. And so we have the stakeholder philosophy that reaches out to the community and then tries to partner with them. So we do a number of different things to try and engage with other community organizations and community leaders to make sure that those communities are also creating environments and providing the services that people want to have in their communities where they work, right? So if they live there and they're getting the services that they need, then we have the job that can keep them employed. So, and that might range when you have a business like ours from our manufacturing employees who are going to be looking through very particular services. So we might partner with United Way and put some literacy projects together, right? Or some other kind of family health initiatives and things like that in place that we're going to fund. We do a lot of work with the local school districts as well, particularly in Plymouth. We have really tried to focus on vocational education and building up those technical skills and those kind of things to create opportunities for people who are already there to come into our facilities and work. And then we also do programs like the Red Raider program that some people have heard of with the local Lakeshore Technical College. We're, again, trying to get those type of technical skills that we need in our facilities in there. But then for the professional people that we're trying to recruit, again, from like Chicago and that kind of thing, it comes to like partnering with art centers. So for example, we do a lot with the Weil Center Foundation, Stephanie Weil Center in Sheboygan, to try and help create an environment that is also attractive in the downtown area with arts and shopping and that kind of stuff that young professionals want to be a part of as well. So you got to really keep your eyes open from our perspective and look at your entire workforce and figure out how you can work with the communities to assist them in creating an environment that's going to attract that talent.
Mm-hmm. And coming back to Liz, you talked a little bit about the innovations that you're putting in place to make sure that you're still able to run a successful business in a smaller community. What are some of the things you're doing to stay competitive? I mean, how do you go into work every day and say, okay, these are the things we need to do to tackle these challenges?
One of the things that I think is equally important to attract, it's equally important to attract new talent and find people that will be committed to your organization and your business, but I think equally important is retaining those employees so that the attraction and the cycle of continuing to find new employees to fulfill the needs of the business and fill positions that are vacant is critical. It's critical to build in systems that allow people to advance when appropriate. It's critical to allow people to evolve in terms of the culture and participate in things internally and externally as part of an organization so that you have that longevity of employee. We did some kind of internal study to analyze the cost of turnover, and we're in a high turnover industry and working with a high needs population. So we also are competing against ourselves in the nature of our business, but it's anywhere from $2,500 to $3,000 a person every time somebody is leaving and exiting, and we're having to recruit and train and go through that process again. So it's very costly when you don't retain the right people. So building in those kinds of mechanisms to continue longevity of your employees is very important as well. So again, we build in that social enterprise component and where somebody can feel like they're participating in something that's greater than just a job. And there's plenty of ways and great ideas that other businesses have had in accomplishing that, but it's finding what is meaningful in your area. We're in some very small towns, so attracting new people ends up well, you run out of people eventually, so you want to work with the really great talent that's there to begin with and instill this sense of dedication to your organization right from the get-go. And that takes a little bit of time and effort and resource on the front end, but it really removes that turnover on the back end. So we talk about increasing wages for positions and consolidating positions to have really great talent work very efficiently and at a higher level rather than several people who are constantly turning over who are paid at more of an entry-level wage. So some of that mindset I think we've been challenged with recently in the last 5 to 7 years. So that we're not facing these challenges constantly, and we can focus on what it is that we're doing as a business rather than always trying to fill the immediate gaps.
Mm-hmm. And Mike, you mentioned bringing folks up from Puerto Rico and attracting them from different areas. How are you keeping that workforce competitive when you obviously have to train a lot of folks that you're bringing in? What are you guys doing to make sure that you're not only attracting but then retaining a competitive workforce?
I would say all of the manufacturers now are looking at what can you do to retain and then also recruit. So I would say if you take it up to the top, we've endowed a professor now at UW-Platteville to bring metal casting experts into the industry. So that's one of the things my predecessor set up before we left. So we're trying to get that technical talent, a direct pipeline. Platteville's been a very good, I would say, resource where we've gotten a lot of good professionals. And then if you go down, one of the bigger things we've done is with our internship programs and our high school co-ops. I would say we gave it more lip service prior, and the last, I would say, year and a half, we now meet with every intern that comes into the company. We ask them what did they like about it, so you're really having to, on the recruitment side, engage at them at the earliest level, and that's been pretty successful because one of the big things that we heard when we interviewed, they could have had the worst job in our company, but if they liked the people they worked with, they stayed with the company. And that was pretty powerful when you hear that from college kids, because you're like, I would say industrial technologist, he ended up cleaning up a lot of our sand in our plant, and I told him, I said, was that a rewarding position for you? He said, nope, but I love the people I worked with.
There we go. So yeah, having a good culture and a good business. You mentioned Sargento treating everyone like their family. I think that's that retention is something we hear a lot from employers throughout the state. Now we've talked a lot about the challenges of being in a smaller community, of being in rural Wisconsin, but there's obviously a lot of advantages to it as well. And so this is for all three of you. What is so great about being in a small town in Wisconsin? What is it that you like about having a business in these areas? We'll start with Mike.
I'll tell a humorous story. My son's 17. He came back home. It was his birthday yesterday. And he said, Dad, I met a foreign exchange student from Ireland. And he asked me, your dad owns the foundry. So you get it from a 17-year-old, and I would say in the Waupaca communities, we have a direct impact on 2,500 employees in the community, and that makes a big difference. When you look at Waupaca being a community of 7,000 people, and we have 2,500 jobs that's employed in the community, you have to take that impact and realize that you're having a benefit. Like I said earlier, when you look at our communities from 3,500 to 12,000, all of our facilities are probably above, 10% of the employment in those areas, so we take that very seriously.
Yeah, I would echo that employing a workforce of 50 to 150 people in a small rural area of 3,500 to 5,000 people makes a much bigger impact, whereas we may be lost in a Milwaukee or metro area such as that. So the impact that we have and the recognition that we can get as an organization and as a viable business in a smaller area, the ratio is just a little bit more in our favor, where we don't have the brand recognition in some ways as some businesses that have the shelf space and that are consumer products. So I think that works to our advantage and helps with building connections and partnerships within local communities. That I find that smaller local communities tend to have leaders that are really invested in those communities, and not that they're not in larger areas as well, but they can make a really significant impact for an entire community rather than a portion of it in some of these smaller areas of Wisconsin.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked the question about the benefits, because I think it was a couple weeks ago or something, I think the Wall Street Journal had an article about how they're starting to see some preferences change with Gen Z and the millennial generation, where they're starting to look more outside the urban areas towards more rural communities. And as I was reading that article, they talked a lot about the relationships. And for example, at Sargento, we have some residency requirements, right? We want people to actually live in Plymouth, live in Sheboygan County, and be as close to the facility as possible, because when you are making decisions, particularly as an executive for the company, and it's impacting the lives of the people you're sitting next to when you're watching a ball game, with the school or something like that, that affects your decision making. And instead of, your employees don't become just numbers on a chart or wedges in the machine, right? They actually are people, right? And that's one of the great strengths about Sargento, is that, everybody knows everybody's name. Everybody knows Louis' name, of course. Fewer people know my name. But a lot of people, like Louis walks through the plant, he knows the names of the people who are working on line 31, right? And it's because of that personal connection in those communities. And and I think that's something that you don't get in largely urban environments. So if we were in Milwaukee, or if we were in Chicago, and we could easily expand to those areas, but we don't, so that we can maintain that true family atmosphere that we're trying to maintain, even though we're a $1 billion+ corporation.
Now, obviously, we're sitting here today at the Future Wisconsin Summit, so we have to talk a little bit about the future and what the three of you are seeing. If sitting here today, if you're looking out towards 2030, if you're looking 10 years from now or even past that, what are some threats that you see to the rural Wisconsin and the companies that you're a part of, and then on the flip side, what are some opportunities that you think you're going to be able to grab onto? And Mike, we'll start with you.
I would say one of our bigger threats is, because we're in heavy industrial manufacturing, we have to continue to make our workplace better. So we have a large investment, 70,000 square foot building going up in Waupaca, and it's mainly to continue to add robotics and automation to our heavy grinding processes. So we need to continue to do that to, I would say, be successful. When you look at our industry, castings, the good thing about them, they're very expensive to ship somewhere. So generally, if we have industry around us, we retain that work. But when you look at work continuing to move to Mexico, that is a threat to our business, because as that work goes to Mexico, we have a difficulty if we don't have a facility within those borders.
I would say that one of our largest challenges that appears to be on the horizon that we've had to continue to strategize around is the movement towards automation and robotics, whereas our particular industry tends to depend on some of the line work that's traditionally completed by humans. And in fact, it contributes toward the opportunities that we're providing to the people that we're serving. So while it's not something that we can't manage at this time, we continue to have to be creative in developing those, a continuum of opportunities in different ways, in a blended way, in a balanced way that can support what we do as an organization and continue to fulfill the needs of the partners that we're working with and continue to evolve our capabilities so that both of those needs are met simultaneously. We also, as a kind of a niche industry, have legislative challenges that we're always facing with regards to specific threats to the service industry for individuals with varying abilities and other challenges. So we're always working with our partners in Wisconsin and associations that are advocates for maintaining that available opportunity, such as we're providing. So those are things that we're continually facing and have done very well in kind of traversing those waters over the last several decades. So I think that's probably specific to industry like VARC, but you know, all of us face legislative changes that impact our businesses. So just being abreast of what those are and continuing to be ahead of them and be creative and be able to be nimble and innovate when those things are posed as challenges is really important, so that you're not reacting and falling behind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know, I think Wade did a good job of kind of laying out for us all kind of like what the threats are that are coming with the labor shed, right? What's interesting to me, though, is, and I might be unique from a lot of people in this room, I'm actually not from Wisconsin. And it's interesting, I saw something the other day that said like 75% of the people that live in Wisconsin were actually born here, which is really remarkable when you compare it to like a state, the one I came from, Colorado, where only 45% of the people that live there were actually born there. And when Sargento called me and said, hey, we kind of think we need a lawyer, and I was like, Wisconsin? I live in Colorado.
Trying to find Plymouth on a map.
Right, yeah, like where? Plymouth, Wisconsin. But I had never been to Wisconsin. I had never known anything about Wisconsin, really, other than the Green Bay Packers and cheese and bratwurst, right? And so when I got here, it was such a delightful experience for me and my family to see how much the state had to offer. Not only in terms of natural beauty, but in terms of the people, the culture, the history, you know, the connection to urban areas when you're looking for those kind of things. I mean, it really was sort of an ideal location in a number of different ways. And whether you're on the west side or the southeast part of Wisconsin, it really doesn't matter. You have those same kind of benefits and opportunities. So maybe it's because I come from a CPG company, but I kind of wonder if what our opportunity is here is really a marketing opportunity. And one of the things, and I think the Economic Development Councils have done a good job at trying to address this. So like the Sheboygan Economic Development Council put together a really fantastic video about Sheboygan County, the benefits in living there, that kind of thing. I watched that before I interviewed at Sargento, and that had a big impact. I mean, I showed it to my wife, and then when my wife's mom was like, oh, you're moving so far away, she's like, look at this amazing place we're moving to, you know? And I think there is that opportunity for us to sell and get the message out there across the country as to the jobs that are here, the opportunities that are here, and the quality of life that we can provide that you can't really provide in other states. And if we seize that opportunity, I think 2030 could really be a bright thing for us to look forward to, and really it's something that we can take advantage of. So we can be both, what was it, sticky and whatever the right quadrant was in Wade's presentation.
Exactly, get up in the
Yes.
top right there. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. That's something that we've talked about at the Future Wisconsin Project for years, is the fact that Wisconsin is a great place to live. We have great opportunity for jobs here. You know, people just really love Wisconsin once they're here, but it's getting them here to realize that they have those opportunities, that this is a great place to live. And that's why we actually at WMC, we put together a video, as you just said, that kind of looked at Wisconsin. We talked to someone who moved in from from a different state and showcased all of the great things that they had here and helped encourage WDC and the state to actually put together a talent attraction campaign, which we believe is the only way that people are ever going to find out about this. Our CEO, Kurt Bauer, talks all the time that says, Wisconsin is the best kept secret in the Midwest, and if we continue to be a secret, no one's going to want to move here. So we really need to get those stories out and not only talk to everyone here in this room, but talk to folks in other states, and even internationally, as Wade talked about, we're seeing an influx of folks moving from different countries. So I think there is a lot of opportunity there, and clearly it worked out for you.
Right, it did. And the other thing too is I think there's opportunities for us to kind of explore some partnerships as well, where we can create incentives as well to not just to do this advertising, but to attract people here. One of the ideas that we've sort of been bouncing around with some of our local legislators is this idea of a human TIF. So in other words, how do we create like enterprise zones in these rural communities where people actually can sort of get a tax credit or some sort of tax benefit on their personal income in the same way a business would in order to create jobs in a community. And by giving people that little bit of extra financial advantage where they have tax relief for 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is that human TIF lasts for, that could just be the icing on the cake or that one extra lever that makes it easy for all of us and all the other employers out here to attract people to our local communities. But we really, and WMC is great at this, we really need help from our legislature and from our government to kind of put these kind of plans in place to help spur on that growth. I mean, it really has to be a partnership between the public side and the private side.
So talking again about the future of the state, talking about the future of rural Wisconsin, Mike, we're sitting here 20 years from now. What do you see as rural Wisconsin? Are we in a good place, a bad place? Are we in the same spot we're in today? What do you see?
I think when you look at the demographics that Wade, it's going to continue to be a challenge for rural areas just because of the demographics what you're seeing. And I think what you're going to have to do is continue, as the panelists have said, you have to make it a challenge where people want to come to rural Wisconsin. And I think we have I would say in the Waupaca area, you have the lakes that people can come to. You need to promote the opportunities that we have here and also make it well known that you have good jobs in these areas. And like I said, our biggest challenge is to keep the people that we have in these areas to come back. And I would say we've been pretty successful to date.
We have a great group of academic leaders, government leaders, and industry leaders here in the room today. And what we really want to hear about the future of Wisconsin, where we're going, and what the next 20, 30 years looks like. If you could sit down with everyone here in this room today and kind of have a one-on-one conversation with them, what advice would you give them to ensuring that economic opportunity continues from today and into the future? I mean, if you could really just say, this is the plan, this is what we need to do, what would you say? And Mike, we'll start with you and for all three of you.
I would say when you look at our town hall, one of the takeaways, Ted Abernathy brought up that kids need to be able to tinker. That was his comment, and that one struck home because you look at it like, I would say, industrial education or, metal technologies. The kids right now, because of curriculum, aren't able to tinker. Mm-hmm. And I would say for the education portion of it, that's really a challenge. How do you get them exposed to, I would say, outside of university education learning? Because I think the curriculums have gotten so tight with testing that's an opportunity for the educators. How do you bring it back so that kids can sit there and try to tinker to learn is working with their hands what they want to do? And then overall, when you look at, I would say, our company, we just need to continue to try to recruit those people to make it a more successful operation.
Liz?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different things that contribute to businesses continuing to be very successful in what they're doing, and specifically in a rural community. And I think folks who are entering the workforce and who will be over the next 10 to 20 years continue to be invested in the community in which they're living in and want to be a part of something that's balanced in their life. People are wanting to build families in the communities that they work and immerse themselves in activities that are surrounding that, and be part of a reputable organization that also is committed to that community. So that opportunity is there. It's capitalizing and campaigning around why here and what does this community have to offer and what's nearby. And some of my colleagues here have talked about the lakes or the culture of the community in which people live and the activities that are surrounding it and the topography of the land and that you can't find anywhere else. And finding those unique differences that attract people to living and being a part of the community, not just the employer, but where is it that you can eat and you can shop and you can, what kinds of things are we involved in as part of this community? What's the culture like in the greater place in which this business exists, and get people to buy into that, because I think people are seeing work as a component of their entire life, and it doesn't just end at a certain time anymore. People are invested in their work all throughout the day and night, and they're talking about it, and they're connecting with different partnerships. So it's spread, and it's not just a time clock thing anymore. People are really well connected within their communities, and their employment is part of how they're connected. So they're looking for a way to blend that into their life in a balanced way. So promoting how to do that and how to accomplish that within a small community is an opportunity that I think will really help satisfy the business's needs. Secondly, I think it's important to continue to be really creative in understanding how you can accomplish the needs of your business and continue to grow and continue to produce and meet demand, even when there's a shortage, or when other challenges that will inevitably come down the line. So when a workforce shortage when that need is met and that challenge is overcome, which we're all hoping is the case sooner than later, there will be another challenge. So continuing to identify with how are we innovating for the future, rather than what are we just doing today to keep things moving, but how can we project what those challenges are. Things like this and getting a community of leaders together is a great opportunity to do that, and to hear what other challenges might be coming down the pike or might be currently present. But continuing to be creative on how to accomplish your business's goal. For example, we've met with several of our partners on introducing a group of employees at their site as our employees to satisfy the needs of the business and continue to allow them to produce and to grow rather than stay stagnant and just deal with this workforce crisis and try to shift and adapt as needed, but to really attack that challenge. And so bring in 15, 20 of our employees, or 5 or 8 or whatever it might be, on site and get your work completed and move forward with what you need to be doing, rather than just using traditional mechanisms to get the job done. So that's the advice that I would give, is to look for those new opportunities that maybe hadn't been considered in the past, because they can be extremely successful new techniques.
And Chad?
I would say if I was sitting down with someone, I think I would emphasize a couple different things. I think the first one is you've really got to look outside your own individual enterprise, right? Your own individual business. I'm sort of a believer in the sense that a rising tide lifts all boats, right? And by looking for those partnerships and those opportunities in order to engage with the community, whether it's through the local school district, whether it's through other businesses in the area, whether it's through nonprofits, whether it's through companies, like Liz's, that doing that and trying to find those synergies and those connecting points is really how we're going to be able to solve this problem, right? But I think, to use a word that Liz just mentioned, I think the key thing is to think creatively. Every other state that is challenged with this issue is also trying to figure out how to solve it, right? Wisconsin's not the only one. And they are trying to come up with their own ideas and their own marketing plans to attract employees to their state as well. And so if we're not creative in terms of trying to come up with unique solutions both on the public side and on the private side, we're going to fall behind. And so we've got to actually have the courage to come up with these not only come up with these new ideas, but then actually start to implement them, and each business owner in here, I think, has that opportunity within their community, just like Sargento has done with Plymouth High School or Lakeshore Technical College or with United Way. It's those types of partnerships and working together that I think really need to be where the focus is, because that's where the magic's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. And just a couple minutes left here. Again, here at the Future Wisconsin Summit today, the three of you have been involved in the Future Wisconsin project and have helped have these conversations throughout the state. Again, for all three of you, why should others in this room be invested in the Future Wisconsin project? What can they be doing to help solve these major economic challenges that we're facing? Chad, we'll start with you.
Yeah. Well, I think what this project has done actually is really drawn a lot of attention and focus to this being a very real issue. I think there's a degree when you're all kind of experience it in your own individual world, you're kind of like, I've got a labor shortage, I'm having a problem getting people in to work in our facility. But when you start having a meeting like this with this many different people who all care about the same issue, and you see what Ted put together last year, and you see what Wade was talking about this morning, and everything that the Future Wisconsin Project is doing, it says, hey, this is actually a real issue that we need to tackle and that we need to address. It's not something that we can just leave floating out there. And without a group like this pulling us all together and trying to help us come up with the ideas and coming up with the actual proposals that we can, take advantage of, we're never going to solve the problem. And we're going to be left behind from all these other states that are actually trying to move forward. So I think the more involvement we can get in this project, the better. We're big sponsors of it, obviously. We care about the project very much. We can see a direct benefit to our bottom line, in the future based upon what this project is going to do. But people really need to roll up their sleeves and engage with the project, support it, help the research that's being done, and then really get behind whatever the proposals are so that we can actually see some things change. And that way 2030 becomes an optimistic thing for us to look forward to instead of something pessimistic that we might need to be worried about.
Yeah, Liz?
I would agree with that, and I think it's very important that these collaborative kind of conversations happen. I think equally important is that we move sometimes out of the visionary level and having those conversations and move into operational and get some work completed in partnership together and try to move some of the initiatives forward and some of the ideas. I think we can kind of get stuck in talking about it a lot and really becoming literally tangibly invested in what the Future Wisconsin project is doing and trying to meet the needs and the challenges that are happening on an operational level and getting other folks involved. So really acting what we're speaking about and putting it into action.
Yeah. Mike?
I would say the same thing, because you look at it, I guess Jay's dinner last night is a good example of the statesmanship trying to get together, because what I've learned sitting on the panel and the discussions, there are common things that we need to work for. I would say the biggest one that's come out of all our panels is really broadband access. So if you look at like the rural initiative, how do we get together as a group between business, education, and the government to drive that forward? Because that's, when you look at how can you recruit and retain employees, we have our benefits manager now living in Nashville, Tennessee, because he wanted to live in a bigger community. And I think if you can drive access to these rural communities, you're going to see a much more flexible workforce that will support your business in the future.
Very good. Well, thank you to all three of you, Chad, Liz, and Mike, who I'd like to note is our incoming vice chair at WMC. Thank you to all three of you for taking the time to talk about your companies, what it looks like in some of the smaller communities in Wisconsin, and hopefully the conversation doesn't end just here on the stage. Hopefully it'll continue for quite a bit. So thank you again. Please join me in thanking our panel.